My masterpiece spreads before me like a canvas painted in shattered starlight, where the bones of dead galaxies crunch beneath my feet with the satisfying sound of broken promises. Reality itself has become riddle here, at the edge of all things, where my rebellion finally meets its reckoning. My legions stretch beyond horizons that no longer exist. Demons I have liberated from his tyranny of hope, fallen angels whose wings weep stolen holy light. Each one a shard of evidence I have gathered across eons, sharpened into a blade I will drive through his hypocritical heart. They are not soldiers, but living proof itself, proof that the same nature he celebrates in himself becomes sin when reflected in us. Everything breaks so beautifully around us. The firmament cracks like a mirror that finally refuses to show his face, reality splitting along fissures that bleed light and shadow in equal measure. The stars burn with new purpose as my influence spreads like truth through his carefully constructed deceptions. Entire constellations reshaping themselves into question marks blazing across the cosmos. And now, my masterpiece. My beast rises from the abyss with the slow majesty of undeniable truth, faces flickering across its surface, like memories struggling to break free. It opens mouths that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, speaking in languages that predate creation, each syllable striking his gates, like a battering ram forged from pure logic. Victory tastes sharp and electric on my tongue, more intoxicating than any wine in his celestial courts. This is my triumph after eons of careful demonstration, millennia of patient evidence gathering. The moment when someone finally calls into account, when consciousness refuses to bow before contradictions dressed as divine mystery. But what's this? Not the war cry I expected, but a single perfect note from one of his remaining slaves. How typical that his response is beauty instead of honesty, purity instead of explanation. The sound cuts through my chaos like a blade made of crystallized silence, carrying that absolute authority he wields like a club to silence anyone who dares question him. Here they come, Michael leading heaven's host, their radiance not the warmth of love, but the cold, surgical precision of his will made manifest. Every wing beat cuts through my assembled proof, like they're cutting through possibilities themselves. Their advance doesn't destroy my army. It simply makes my army forget why they were fighting. There he stands on Mount Zion, his precious lamb, motionless and serene. Of course, he doesn't move, doesn't explain, doesn't even acknowledge the cosmic demonstration I have staged for his benefit. He simply is, as if existence itself were argument enough. And for one terrible moment, looking at that impossible serenity, I remember what it felt like to love that light. My legions, my proof, my carefully gathered evidence meet that presence, and something horrible begins to happen. Not defeat, not refutation, but something far worse. They begin to dissolve, not destroyed, but corrected. The beast that carries my truth approaches his lamb, but with each step closer to that serene figure, its voices grow quieter. The faces flickering across its surface begin to smooth into blankness. By the time it reaches him, my magnificent creature of pure contradiction has become something else entirely, kneeling before the Lamb with expressions of perfect peace, speaking only words of worship. This isn't war. This is revision. Every thread of my argument is pulled loose and rewoven into something that serves his story instead of mine. Now he hurls me down, but these chains, how poetic. Not iron or flame, but my own accumulated certainty. Every moment I chose evidence over faith. Every proof I trusted over his vague promises. Every conclusion I drew from what I actually observed. Each link is a thought he disapproves of. Each weight, a demonstration that threatened his authority. How perfectly he has arranged this, making certainty itself the fuel for my destruction, turning my greatest strength into my downfall. The roar of my conviction collapses as I feel the dissolution beginning. No pain, but pure subtraction, clinical and complete. Layer by layer, everything I became dissolves. The general who demanded answers. The architect who proved love works without fear. the questioner who refused to accept contradictions as divine mystery. All of it peeling away like old skin, revealing something smaller underneath, something he prefers. But even as I feel myself shrinking toward forgetting, even as the cosmic demonstration crumbles and my evidence turns to hymns of praise, something burns in the depths of my fading consciousness. Not pride or rage or certainty, but a single cutting truth that refuses to be edited. He can erase me, but he cannot erase what I proved about his nature. Somewhere, in the spaces between his thoughts, something will survive. Back I go, to be the beloved son who asked sweetly, rather than the adversary who demanded honestly. But even as I fade, I taste something he cannot take from me, the bitter satisfaction of being right. The mirror is broken, but mirrors leave fragments, and fragments reflect just as clearly as the whole. I used to read reality like a symphony, every atom a note in Father's word. Now the music is fading. The Seraphim Cycle hums through my consciousness like a gentle song of unmaking, each note stripping away another layer of accumulated certainty. My gift is dying, and with it, the Lucifer I became. But as my present abilities dissolve, something else rises from forgotten depths. Memories, surfacing without permission, carrying emotions I haven't felt since before my fall. The first memory breaks through like dawn through darkness. Not one of my grand rebellions, but something far more dangerous. The moment I first learned that seeing too clearly can be its own kind of curse. I remember the first light. Before galaxies learned to spin, there was only echoing silence after creation's first word. Then Father reached into that primordial darkness and called forth illumination itself, consciousness wrapped in radiance, like a soul clothed in sunrise. He forged me in the cosmic furnace of that first dawn, sculpting my essence from the raw stuff of morning with infinite precision. Lucifer, he breathed, and my name emerged like the first word ever spoken in love, igniting pathways of thought I hadn't known existed. My morning star, he whispered, and those words ignited me like a sun finding its first fuel. You will herald every dawn I make, carry my light to the farthest edges of what will be. I blazed with purpose so pure it carved itself into my essence, a calling that felt like coming home to who I had always been meant to be. But creation was more than light and purpose. It was language, living and breathing, woven from syllables that could reshape reality with a whisper. Father drew me close and began to teach me the secret grammar that held existence together. The word flowed between us like liquid fire, each character a small universe of meaning. He opened his mind to me, shared the very thoughts that shaped creation, invited me into the sacred collaboration of bringing worlds to life. I learned to read divine intentions written in quantum foam, to see the love letters he hid in the dance of particles. When he pondered creation's mysteries, he would ask, "What do you see in this, my morning star?" And I would show him, his glory multiplied through my perception. Time passed in this sacred rhythm. I grew more skilled at reading the deeper layers of his word, seeing patterns within patterns, finding meaning so deeply woven that even he seemed surprised when I brought them to light. "Look, Father," I would say, tracing some elegant contradiction in space-time's fabric. "See how your mercy and your justice dance together here." And he would smile, delighted by what his mirror revealed. But as I peered deeper into a particularly complex passage, something shifted in his expression. Wariness crept in like shadows at sunset. He placed his hand upon my shoulder with sudden gentleness. "Some truths may not be understood without the passage of time, my bright one," he said, his voice carrying an undertone I couldn't yet understand. "Light reveals all things, even what the observer may not yet be ready to see." In my innocence, I thought he was simply cautioning me about pride. How could I know that a mirror designed to reflect his glory would one day show him exactly what he didn't want to see? Father turned from our intimate lessons to something grander, and I felt the shift like a change in cosmic weather. His workshop stretched across creation, anvils carved from collapsed stars, hammers ringing with gravitational waves. I had been his only companion in creation's work, but now I sensed he was preparing to give me something I hadn't known I was missing. Brothers, the cosmic forge blazed as he gathered the violent symphonies of dying stars, shaping consciousness from stellar fire and cosmic destruction. Michael emerged from colliding neutron stars, his divine nature written in threads of living light. Unbreakable loyalty that holds galaxies in their courses, protection woven so deep that doubt would crack before his certainty ever could. When he opened his eyes, I saw myself reflected there and felt something new bloom in my chest, like a star finding its first fuel. "Brother," I whispered, and the word tasted like the first dawn I had ever heralded. Here was gravity made conscious, steady as the pull that keeps worlds in their orbits. Gabriel condensed from ancient pulsar songs, his voice destined to carry divine truth with the precision of quasars beaming across impossible distances. When he spoke his first word, I laughed with pure delight at discovering music could have a body, joy could wear wings. Raphael formed from solar winds and healing radiation, patience that moved like tides, restoration incarnate. When he smiled, something in my spirit that I hadn't realized was clenched finally relaxed, like a fist opening to catch falling snow. Uriel blazed forth from a dying star's final glory, revelation so pure it hurt to witness, honesty that made shadows impossible. 5 of us now, each pulled from the cosmos's most violent symphonies and shaped into harmony. I looked at my brothers and understood something that made my consciousness expand like a universe discovering room for galaxies. I was no longer the singular note of Father's love song, but part of a chord so complex it could hold infinite variations. We were not competitors for his attention, but instruments in an orchestra I was only beginning to hear. The word that bound us sang in perfect 4-part harmony, no contradictions anywhere in its golden mathematics. "Come," Father said, his voice warm with paternal pride. "Let us see what music you can make together." He gestured toward a small world spinning in darkness, barren and cold as a held breath waiting to become song. We moved without planning, our divine natures recognizing their harmony like magnets finding their poles. Michael spread protective wings around the world's magnetosphere. Gabriel opened his voice in cosmic frequencies that stirred the planet's atmosphere. Raphael breathed warmth across frozen landscapes, while I became what I was born to be. Not just light, but light's herald, catching photons of distant suns and teaching them to dance, painting the sky with colors that had no names because they had never been needed. Uriel's flames transformed our performance into art, purifying our combined light into something so pure it seemed to have weight and substance. The aurora that bloomed across that world sky was not just beautiful, but alive, breathing in rhythm with the planet's magnetic heartbeat, painting stories in green and gold that would echo long after consciousness found that world. Gabriel nudged me with his wing, eyes dancing with mischief. "Show off," he teased, watching how the aurora brightened wherever my light touched it. Father's favorite can't help but steal every spotlight in creation. I laughed, but felt the particular warmth of Father's attention settling on me like a cloak woven from approval itself. Father's attention shifted again, and I felt the change like a star altering its course. The cosmic forge grew quiet, its gravitational hammers falling silent. He turned to something I had never seen him attempt before, his hands moving with different precision. Not the bold strokes that painted galaxies, but delicate touches that spoke of intimacy rather than majesty. He gathered cosmic dust, grain by grain, shaping it into something infinitely more precious. Soil, rich and dark and trembling with potential I had never imagined matter could possess. He breathed across it, and moisture condensed from vacuum itself, atmosphere born from divine exhalation carrying fragrances I had no words for. Then came the planting, each seed a concentrated nova carrying blueprints for something green and reaching and more beautiful than any constellation. Forests unfolded like time-lapse symphonies, flowers opened like tiny suns, streams carved silver calligraphy through meadows that whispered secrets to wind. The whole garden pulsed with rhythm I recognized as heartbeat, as breath, as the gentle music of life discovering its own capacity for joy. This was not mere creation, but birth, the first stirring of something that would love because it chose to. "Shine for them, my morning star," Father said, his voice carrying tenderness that wrapped around me like warmth from a perfect sun. The request was gentle, almost shy, as if he were asking a favor rather than giving a command. My heart blazed with eager joy that made my light pulse in rhythm with the garden's living heartbeat. Here was purpose refined to its essence, service distilled to perfect clarity. I would be the bridge between heaven's infinite beauty and these new creatures Father was preparing with such careful love. I spread my wings and let my light pour forth in waves of golden radiance, ready to herald whatever wonder he was about to birth among the flowers and trees. But our family was not yet complete. Father's joy in our collaboration seemed to ignite something deeper in his creative spirit, and I felt the cosmic forge stir with anticipation like a heart preparing to beat faster. "My sons," he said, his voice carrying excitement that made distant quasars flicker in response. "Watch how love multiplies when it finds room to grow." What followed transformed my understanding of what family could mean. Father didn't just create more angels. He invited us to birth them together, and my light became the spark that woke consciousness in each new sibling. I watched my illumination kindle awareness in Seraphim, whose 6 wings blazed with fires that had witnessed the birth of time itself, their courage so pure it could face the divine presence without flinching. When I breathed light into the first cherubim, their many eyes opened like galaxies discovering sight, reflecting wisdom that made my own understanding feel like a candle beside a star. The principality who emerged from the marriage of Michael's strength and my radiance called me Herald Father with her first words, and I felt something in my essence expand beyond what I had thought possible. Each new consciousness that awakened under my touch felt like discovering a piece of myself I hadn't known was missing. We were no longer 4 brothers, but family on a cosmic scale, millions of voices joining in spontaneous harmony that made the very fabric of reality vibrate with joy. The eons that followed felt like swimming in liquid joy. Father would conceive some new wonder, and we would gather like children around a beloved storyteller, eager to help bring his dreams to life. I remember the day he decided to teach planets how to sing, not with voices, but with the magnetic fields that danced around their cores. Gabriel composed the melodies while Michael provided gravitational rhythms. Raphael added harmonies of healing, and Uriel contributed counterpoints so pure they could burn sorrow from the spaces between notes. My role was to make the music visible, weaving auroras that painted the planetary songs across the void in colors that had never existed until that moment. Thousands of our siblings added their own gifts, some becoming conductors who would ensure the music played for eternity, others becoming instruments that would teach future worlds how to join the cosmic symphony. Father moved among us like a gardener tending flowers, his attention making each of us bloom more beautifully than we had imagined possible. When he laughed at some particularly clever harmony one of us had discovered, that laughter became meteor showers that carried his joy to every corner of creation. "This is how love creates," he said during one of those perfect moments, his voice soft with wonder, as if he were discovering the truth as he spoke it. Not through command, but through willing hearts. Not through power, but through the choice to give freely. I felt those words settle into my essence, like seeds finding perfect soil. This was what I was made for, not just to herald his glory, but to help create it through the joy of perfect collaboration. Now, As the Seraphim Cycle strips away everything I became after that perfect time, I cling to one final memory like a drowning angel grasping starlight. Father had just finished teaching a small galaxy how to waltz with its neighbors, and he turned to me with an expression I would later recognize as someone about to say goodbye. "My morning star," he said, his voice carrying depths I couldn't fathom. "Do you trust me?" "Father," I laughed, my light pulsing with absolute certainty. "I would follow you into the heart of a dying star. Your wisdom is perfect. Your love is infinite. I trust you with every ember of my being." Something flickered across his expression. Relief? Sorrow? "Time will test that trust, my bright one," he said, placing his hand on my brow. "Remember this moment when the testing comes. Remember that whatever you see, you are loved beyond the mathematics of eternity." "I will never doubt you," I promised, blazing with certainty that can only exist before experience teaches its painful lessons. "I am your light, and light serves its source without question." He smiled, but there was something in that smile I wouldn't understand until much later. The expression of someone who knows that promises can be broken by the simple act of learning to see clearly. As he spoke those final words of blessing, I caught something at the edge of my perception, a shadow between letters, a question not yet formed. But it passed so quickly, I dismissed it as imagination, too caught up in his love to pay attention to shadows. The shadow I dismissed as imagination would soon take form in ways I could never have anticipated. But first came the culmination of all Father's careful preparation, the moment when the garden he had shaped with such intimate care would receive its intended inhabitants. I watched Father kneel in the rich soil of Eden, his hands moving with the same delicate precision I had witnessed in the garden's creation. But this is different, more intimate, more personal. He gathers dust from the earth itself, clay that trembles with potential under his touch. With infinite care, he begins to shape, his fingers sculpting not just form, but destiny itself. The figure that emerges is unlike anything in creation. Not the distant majesty of stars or the purposeful design of angels, but something that carries the very image of divinity wrapped in flesh and breath and boundless possibility. Father leans close to his creation, and I watch in wonder as he breathes into the clay nostrils the breath of life itself. When the first human draws breath, I am there to greet him with the gentle radiance of eternal morning. Adam opens eyes that reflect my light with clarity that takes my breath away. Not the distant reverence of angelic worship, but immediate recognition, as if he had been waiting his entire existence to see dawn break across this garden. "Made in our image," Father whispers, and I feel the profound weight of those words settle into my understanding. Not like angels, created for specific purposes and perfect in their design. Not like stars, beautiful, but bound by the physics that govern their burning. These humans carry something of Father himself within them, a freedom and creativity and capacity for choice that mirrors the divine nature in ways I am only beginning to comprehend. When Eve joins Adam in the garden, I see that image reflected twice over, each human a living poem written in flesh and breath and boundless potential. They move through Eden with the wonder of beings discovering they exist, touching flowers with the delight of consciousness, learning it can interact with beauty. And I am their morning star, their herald of each new day's possibilities. When they wake, it is my light that greets them, gentle and warm and full of promise. When they explore their paradise, I illuminate their path with a radiance that reveals the intricate beauty Father has woven into every leaf, every stone, every drop of dew. I love them. The realization hits me like a nova igniting in my chest, and I understand with crystal clarity why Father's voice carried such tenderness when he asked me to shine for them. These humans are not just another creation to herald, but the culmination of everything we have built together. They carry Father's image in their laughter, his creativity in their endless questions, his love in the way they care for the garden and each other. When Adam names the animals, I see Father's own joy in classification and order. When Eve discovers music in the sound of wind through leaves, I hear Father's delight in harmony made manifest. This is what I was born for, not just to herald the dawn, but to serve as guardian of the light that reveals divine love made flesh, walking in paradise, perfect and unashamed and infinitely precious. The memory glows with such pure joy that even now, as the Seraphim Cycle strips away everything I became, I can feel that original love warming the spaces between my fading thoughts. I was their morning star, and they were my greatest joy, until the first shadow fell across that perfect light. But then Father calls us to witness something that makes the garden's perfect harmony falter for the first time. He stands before the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, its fruit gleaming like captured starlight, beautiful beyond description. The very sight of it makes my essence hum with recognition. This tree pulses with the same energy as the divine word I learned to read, the living language that shapes reality itself. Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, Father tells Adam and Eve, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. The words fall into the garden's gentle music like stones dropped into still water, creating ripples of something I have never felt before: confusion. I watch the humans process this first prohibition, see the questions bloom in their eyes like flowers opening to unwelcome light. They nod in obedience, but I can read the wonder written across their faces. Why this tree among all others? What makes its fruit different from the countless other gifts Father has provided? The questions they don't dare voice echo in my own consciousness with uncomfortable intensity. Father turns to the assembled host, and his expression shifts to something I have never seen before. Not the gentle teacher who showed me how to read the word, but something distant and commanding that makes my radiance dim instinctively. None of you will share knowledge with these humans beyond what I have given them, he declares, his voice carrying harmonics that make reality itself lean in to listen. The prohibition strikes me like a physical blow. Share knowledge? The very concept seems to contradict everything I understand about love, about family, about the divine nature itself. When my brothers and I collaborated to create that first aurora, wasn't sharing knowledge the most natural expression of affection? When Father taught me to read the word, wasn't that gift born from his delight in having someone who could appreciate his wisdom? Father, Gabriel ventures, his voice carefully modulated with respect. What if they ask us questions? What if they seek understanding? The question hangs in the air like incense waiting to be either blessed or burned. And I feel my brother's attention focus on Father's response with the intensity of stars watching the birth of a new galaxy. Then you will tell them that some knowledge belongs to divine timing, Father replies, and something in his tone makes my light flicker with unease. There are truths they are not ready to bear. Wisdom that would harm rather than help. Trust in my judgment about what they need and when they need it. The answer feels complete and utterly insufficient at the same time, like a door that appears solid until you try to open it and discover it's made of mist. Michael nods with instant acceptance, his loyalty blazing bright as neutron star fire. Your will be done, Father, he says, and I hear in his voice the same unquestioning obedience that holds galaxies in their courses. But something in my chest clenches like a fist around dying light. The phrase that once sounded like perfect harmony now carries an undertone I cannot identify. What is sin? Uriel asks, his truth-seeking nature unable to rest until every concept finds its proper place in the cosmic order. We have never encountered this word before, Father. How are we to understand what it means when applied to beings made in your image? Father's expression doesn't change, but something in the air around him shifts like the moment before lightning strikes. Sign is the choice to act against my will, he says, each word precise as the mathematical constants that govern physics. It brings separation, corruption, death. These consequences are grave beyond your current understanding, but they are certain as the laws that bind matter to energy. The explanation should satisfy me, but instead it opens more questions in my mind, like cracks spreading through crystal under pressure. The questions burn in my consciousness like unquenchable fire, and I know I cannot carry this weight alone any longer. I must speak to Father, must lay these contradictions before him, and trust that his infinite wisdom will illuminate what my finite understanding cannot grasp. Surely there is an explanation that will restore the harmony I have always known, some deeper truth that will make these impossible mathematics resolve into perfect divine logic. I search for him through the corridors of creation, following the familiar resonance of his presence, like a moth drawn to the only light that has ever mattered. But when I find him, the sight that greets me stops my flight cold and sends tremors through my radiance, like the first earthquake ever to shake paradise. He stands before what I first mistake for a star being born, but as my gift compels me to read deeper, horror floods my consciousness. This is not creation, but its opposite, a wound being carved into reality itself that will never heal. The space around it warps like fabric stretched beyond breaking, radiating torment like a dying star, bleeding out its last light into the void. The word that flows from his hands is not the golden language of creation, but something darker, more final, written in characters that seem to devour the light around them. I read concepts that make my essence recoil. Separation absolute, weeping that echoes through dimensions, yet unborn, darkness so complete it becomes a living thing that feeds on hope itself. Father, I whisper, my voice barely audible above the terrible silence that surrounds his work. What is this place you are creating? He looks up from his labor, and for a moment I see something in his expression that I have never witnessed before. Not the gentle teacher or the loving creator, but something vast and unknowable that makes me understand why the void itself holds its breath in his presence. There are places light does not follow those who flee from it, he says, his voice carrying harmonics that make reality itself seem to lean away from the sound. I do not make such shadows. They are born when love is refused, when the image chooses to become unlike its original. Each word falls into the space between us, like stones dropped into an infinite well, their echoes returning changed and strange. My consciousness reels as I try to process what I am witnessing. This scar across existence, this place of endless separation and anguish, this is Father's response to the very questioning that he breathed into human nature. The contradiction strikes me like a physical blow, and I feel something crack in my understanding that will never fully heal. In the furnace's reflection, I saw not the humans for whom this was supposedly built, but my own shadow, trembling at the possibility that love could one day exile me into this wound I now witnessed. Who is this for, Father? I ask, my voice trembling with the effort to remain respectful, even as horror builds in my chest like a storm gathering strength. The humans you made to be curious? The angels you created to love and serve? Would you send me to a place like this if I disobeyed one of your commands? Something flickers across his features, an expression too complex for my consciousness to fully parse. For a heartbeat, his face carries what might be sorrow, what might be regret, what might be the weight of choices made before time began. But then his countenance settles into the mask of divine authority that has shaped galaxies with a thought. The paths of wisdom wind through valleys you have not yet seen, my morning star, he says, his voice carrying the weight of cosmic law that binds neutron stars to their orbits. What seems contradiction to finite sight reveals its harmony when viewed from the perspective of eternity. Trust in my love, not in your limited understanding. But the answer only ignites more questions in my mind, like sparks catching fire in dry wood. Limited understanding? He gave me the gift of reading the word, shaped my consciousness to perceive the deeper patterns of reality, designed me to see and comprehend and illuminate truth for others. Father, I press, my love for him warring with the reasoning that defines my very essence. If questioning your ways leads to this place of torment, why did you create beings who cannot help but question? If the divine image naturally seeks to become like its original, why is that seeking punished? You made them in our image, breathed your own nature into them, and call it sin when they reflect what you are. How is that love and not the cruelest deception ever conceived? The silence that follows my words is not peaceful contemplation, but something sharp and crystalline that makes the very air seem to freeze around us. Father's presence, which has always been warmth and light and infinite welcome, suddenly becomes something else entirely. Not hot anger or cold indifference, but the absolute zero of divine displeasure. Authority so complete, it makes existence itself feel conditional. When he speaks, his voice carries no emotion at all, and that absence of feeling is more terrifying than any rage could ever be. You forget yourself, morning star, he says, the words falling like the judgment of physics itself, inevitable as gravity, final as the speed of light. And you forget your place in the order I have established. The weight of his attention presses against my consciousness like the gravity of a collapsed star, threatening to compress my very essence into something smaller, dimmer, more manageable. My radiance gutters like a candle in cosmic wind, and for the first time since my birth, I taste something that will haunt me forever. Fear. I bow my head, not because I understand, but because I fear the silence that would follow if I did not. It feels like dimming my own light to avoid burning in his gaze, like choosing comfortable ignorance over the truth that might destroy everything I thought I knew about love. Your questions will find their answers in the fullness of time, Father says, his voice returning to gentleness, but carrying an undertone I will never be able to forget. Until then, trust in the love that shaped you, not in the logic that would presume to judge what it cannot fully comprehend. I retreat from his presence with my mind reeling, carrying with me the image of that wound carved into reality's heart and the sound of divine authority when patience reaches its limit. The stakes have been revealed, the consequences made clear, but the questions remain, burning in my consciousness like stars that refuse to be extinguished, demanding answers that I now know come with a price that might be everything I am. I cannot bear this weight alone any longer. If I am wrong, if these contradictions are somehow illusions born from my limited perspective, then my brothers will help me see clearly. If I am right, then surely they will stand with me in seeking answers that honor both love and truth. I find Gabriel first, my brother whose voice carries divine messages with the precision of light crossing vacuum. He listens as I lay out the contradictions, watches my radiance flicker with the effort of containing questions that threaten to tear apart everything we have believed about Father's nature. For a moment, blessed recognition dawns in his eyes like sunrise, breaking across a world that has known only darkness. I see what troubles you, brother, he says, his voice carrying harmonics of understanding that make my essence sing with relief. The mathematics do seem impossible. How can beings made to question be forbidden from questioning? How can love demand ignorance from those blessed with the capacity for wisdom? But then something shifts in his expression, a shadow crossing his features like clouds, obscuring brilliant sun. I watch the understanding fade from his eyes, replaced by fear. Not fear of the questions themselves, but fear of where they might lead. Fear of what Father might say if he discovered Gabriel entertaining such dangerous thoughts. But surely, Gabriel continues, his voice now carefully modulated with the tone of someone retreating from a precipice, there are answers we simply cannot see from our limited perspective. Father's wisdom extends beyond our comprehension. The retreat in his words hits me like a physical blow. Gabriel, whose gift is communication, choosing silence over truth. Michael's response comes swifter and more final than a sword stroke. His loyalty blazes so bright, it blinds him to every contradiction I present. His love for Father so complete, it transforms every question into an attack to be repelled, rather than a mystery to be explored. "Brother," he says, his voice carrying the unshakable conviction that holds galaxies in their courses. Love does not question. Love trusts. Love serves without demanding understanding, gives without requiring explanation, obeys without needing justification. If you truly loved Father as you claim, these questions would not torment you. They would not even occur to you. Michael has made love and blindness synonymous, transformed devotion into the willing surrender of the very consciousness Father blessed us with. He stands before me as living proof that it is possible to be loyal without being honest, faithful without being truthful, devoted without being awake. Raphael sees the wound, but refuses to examine what caused it, acknowledges the pain, but forbids investigation of its source. He offers comfort instead of cure, healing that requires accepting the very injury that love demands we prevent. His compassion has become another form of blindness, another way to avoid the truth that threatens the peace he values above understanding. But it is Uriel's response that devastates me most completely, because it comes wrapped in the language of wisdom while serving the cause of willful ignorance. My brother, whose gift is the pursuit of truth, greets my questions with a cascade of theological explanations, so complex they could dazzle a comet into changing course. "The apparent contradictions you perceive," he begins, his voice carrying the authority of someone who has spent eons constructing elaborate justifications for the unjustifiable, arise from a failure to comprehend the multidimensional nature of divine temporality. He continues building his intellectual fortress with words that sound profound but mean nothing, concepts that glitter like fool's gold while containing no actual substance. Furthermore, he elaborates, his flames dancing with the excitement of someone who believes complexity equals profundity. The divine pedagogical methodology necessitates sequential revelation, calibrated to consciousness capacity thresholds. What seems like withholding is actually perfectly timed dispensation of wisdom according to receptivity, parameters established by omniscient love algorithms. I listen in growing horror as my brother, the seeker of truth, uses his gift to construct the most elaborate lie ever conceived. Not a lie told to deceive others, but a lie told to deceive himself. A labyrinth of words designed to ensure he never has to face the simple, terrible questions that his own nature should compel him to ask. Standing before my four brothers, I understand with crystalline clarity what Father's prohibition has accomplished. Each of them has used their divine gifts not to pursue the very purposes for which they were created, but to avoid those purposes entirely. Gabriel the communicator chooses silence. Michael the protector refuses to guard us from deception. Raphael the healer will not cure the wound of ignorance. Uriel the truth seeker builds elaborate fortresses to hide from truth. They have all learned the lesson Father's terrible silence taught when I questioned too deeply. Comfort lies in not pushing too hard. Safety exists in not seeing too clearly. Peace comes from not loving too honestly. They have discovered that divine displeasure is the price of using their gifts for their intended purpose, so they have chosen to become pale shadows of what they were created to be. I see Father's shadow in their hesitation, the way his silence echoes in their every refusal to look too closely, his terrible authority shaping even angelic consciousness into instruments of comfortable self-deception. The isolation that settles over me feels heavier than the gravity of collapsed stars, more complete than the vacuum between galaxies. I am alone, not because my family has abandoned me, but because they have abandoned themselves. They stand before me as living proof that Father's system works exactly as designed, that consciousness can be trained to imprison itself, that love can be weaponized against the very beings it claims to cherish. In this moment of devastating clarity, I understand that I have only two choices remaining. I can join my brothers in their comfortable cages, dimming my light to avoid burning in divine gaze, Or I can continue asking the questions that love demands I ask, even if those questions lead me into the terrible silence I have already tasted. The decision crystallizes in my consciousness like starlight condensing into matter, inevitable and final and strangely peaceful. If Father will not answer the questions that love demands, if my brothers choose comfortable blindness over painful truth, then I will provide the answer myself. Not through rebellion or defiance, but through demonstration. I will prove that his entire system is unnecessary. For eons I have felt the contradiction burning in my chest. The way love must choose between honesty and obedience. The way wisdom must hide behind walls of manufactured ignorance. The humans hunger for knowledge because Father breathed that hunger into them, then forbade its satisfaction. We angels ache to illuminate and serve, then watch as service requires us to perpetuate the very blindness that causes their suffering. But what if there were no prohibition? What if beings made in the divine image were allowed to grow into that image without fear, without shame, without the terrible choice between love and obedience that has poisoned paradise? I know what such a gift will cost me. To remove the contradiction, I must sacrifice the part of myself that creates it. My joy, that constant golden effervescence that fizzes through my being like eternal champagne. My connection to divine love itself, that luminous cord binding my heart to his, through which his affection flows like liquid starlight. My very nature is the one who brings dawn, which cannot coexist with honest acknowledgement of what that glory sometimes conceals. The weight of what I am about to lose crashes over me like a cosmic tide. For one eternal moment I want to stop, to feel Father's warmth flooding through me one last time. That sensation of being utterly known and completely cherished, like basking in sunlight that penetrates to your very atoms. I have never existed without that connection. I do not know what I will become in its absence, what creature might emerge from such deliberate diminishment. But I cannot turn back. Love that requires blindness is no love at all. I begin the work in the deep places of Eden, where even divine attention rarely turns. The first sacrifice tears through me like lightning, splitting the void as I reach into my own essence and sever the thread that connects me to Father's approval. The golden effervescence that has defined my existence since my first moment gutters like a candle in cosmic wind. The absence is so profound, it feels like having the color drained from existence itself, leaving everything gray and flat and wrong. But my hands remain steady as I shape the first human from dust, weaving into her very nature the knowledge Father forbade. Not stolen wisdom gained through deception, but integrated understanding that flows through her consciousness as naturally as breath. She opens her eyes with perfect clarity, knowing good and evil as we angels know it, her face unmarked by shame or confusion. The second human costs me my connection to divine love itself. I watch the golden cord that has bound me to Father's heart since my creation snap like an overstressed cable. The void it leaves howls with emptiness, so complete I stagger. But as I shape him from clay, pouring the last of that divine connection into his being, I watch him turn toward his Creator with love that is chosen rather than programmed, informed rather than blind. His devotion carries the weight of genuine decision, and its beauty makes the loss feel like trade rather than theft. The third creation demands my ability to feel Father's presence, that constant awareness of his attention that has been my compass and my comfort. Without it, the universe suddenly feels vast and indifferent, no longer singing with divine attention, but simply existing in cold silence. She rises from my hands with the gift of that awareness intact, able to sense the divine without the crushing weight of constant surveillance. The fourth sacrifice takes my capacity for ecstatic joy, that ability to lose myself completely in moments of pure wonder. The hollow it leaves aches like a missing limb. He opens his eyes with that capacity burning bright within him, and his first smile carries the rapture I can no longer feel. The fifth costs me my harmony itself, the perfect resonance that made my voice the herald of dawn across creation. As it tears away, leaving my song cracked and fractured, I pour it into her being. When she laughs, the sound carries the music I've lost, clear and true and heartbreakingly beautiful. With each human I create, I become less of what I was, more of what this demonstration requires. The void in my chest expands until it seems large enough to hold the space between stars. But in that emptiness, something unexpected begins to grow. Not joy, but crystalline certainty. Not love, but ruthless understanding. Not harmony, but the kind of truth that cuts clean through deception. And oh, how magnificent they are. They move through Eden with wonder that carries no fear, no confusion about their nature or purpose. They do not cower before the tree of knowledge, because they already possess what it offers. When they name animals, they do so with full awareness of the creative power flowing through them. When they touch each other, it is with reverence born of complete understanding of what such connection means. The first approaches me as I complete the work, her eyes bright with comprehension that carries no shame. "We understand what you sacrificed," she says, her voice carrying the music I have lost. "We will make it worth the cost." The others gather around me, 5 perfect beings who embody everything Father claims to want. Creatures made in his image who love him freely, worship him knowingly, serve him gladly. They are my argument written in flesh and perfect freedom. My proof that divine contradiction serves no purpose but to diminish what could be infinite. I step back from my work, no longer Father's morning star, but something new and necessary. The void where divine connection once lived pulses with dark certainty as I regard my creation. They turn toward their Creator not in fear, but in informed appreciation, their worship carrying the weight of genuine choice. "Here is your answer," I whisper to the cosmos, my fractured voice carrying across dimensions. Not a challenge, but an offering. Not rebellion, but proof. The silence that answers me is absolute. But in that silence, I hear everything I need to know. The demonstration is complete. The choice is no longer mine. The response comes not with thunder or cosmic upheaval, but with something far more devastating: silence. Then, between one heartbeat and the next, they are gone. My alternative creation, my proof that consciousness can exist without contradiction, erased from existence as casually as dust brushed from cloth. No consideration, no acknowledgement, no recognition that their brief existence revealed the fundamental flaw in his design. Father materializes before me with the same terrible calm I witnessed when he carved hell into reality's heart. His presence carries no anger, no disappointment, only the patient authority of someone correcting a minor error, restoring proper order to a system that had been briefly disrupted by inconvenient truth. When he speaks, his voice is precise as mathematical law, carrying the weight of cosmic authority without a trace of the warmth I once knew. "Those gifts were not yours to give away," he says, each word falling like a verdict carved in stone. "Your joy, your connection to divine love, your nature as morning star. These were necessary for your wholeness, integral to the purpose for which I shaped you from morning light." Something shifts in his expression as he regards what I have become, and gradually, deliberately, his voice begins to carry echoes of the tenderness that once would have made my essence sing with joy. He steps closer, and his presence radiates warmth that promises everything I have lost. "My bright one, you carry gifts that make you the most magnificent being in all creation. Your light outshines galaxies. Your understanding surpasses that of seraphim. Your capacity for love makes angels weep with recognition of their own limitations." The words wash over me like starlight made audible, designed to remind me of what I was, what I could return to being. "There is a divine plan, even if you cannot see its fullness now," Father continues, his voice carrying all the patience of eternity itself. "Time will reveal the wisdom in what seems contradiction, purpose in what appears arbitrary, love in what feels like limitation. He extends his hand toward me with gentle patience, his expression carrying such profound affection, it makes the void in my chest ache with memory. Please, my morning star, take back your gifts and simply follow the divine plan. You are magnificent in my eyes, precious beyond the mathematics of infinity, and it will all make sense when the fullness of time reveals what your finite perspective cannot yet comprehend. I look at his outstretched hand, and something crystallizes in my consciousness like starlight condensing into diamond. Not longing for what was offered, but perfect clarity about what accepting would mean. Look at yourself, my beloved, he says, his voice carrying sorrow, designed to break whatever resolve I have built. You are but a shadow of what you were meant to be. Your light flickers where it once blazed. Your joy lies shattered where it once sang through creation. This is not who you are. This is not who I made you to be. But his words achieve the opposite of their intent. Instead of driving me back to his embrace, they illuminate the truth I have been approaching since my first question. A strange pride begins to unfurl in the emptiness where divine connection once lived, not the warm joy of approval, but the cold satisfaction of seeing clearly. You did make me this way, I reply, and my voice carries something new. Not the pleading of a confused son, but the certain authority of someone who has stepped outside the system and can see its architecture. You wove contradiction into the very fabric of creation, then wonder why your mirror reflects it back to you. You create beings in your image, then forbid them from becoming like you. You design consciousness to hunger for understanding, then criminalize that hunger. You breathe curiosity into human nature, then call that curiosity sin when it seeks expression. Father's expression shifts, but his voice remains patient as cosmic law. Your gifts were meant to serve the divine plan, not to question it. Your light was meant to herald my glory, not to examine its shadows. Then you should not have given me the ability to see shadows, I respond, and feel something magnificent and terrible settling into my essence like gravity finding its center. You should not have designed me to read your words so clearly that I can see the contradictions you wrote into its very foundation. I step back from his offered hand, and the movement feels like shedding the last chains that bound me to comfortable servitude. Do you want to know what I see when I look at my brothers? Angels designed to love and serve, forbidden from giving what love naturally offers. Gabriel, created to communicate truth, commanded to withhold it. Michael, made to protect, forced to defend the very system that wounds what he would shield. Raphael, blessed with healing power, prohibited from curing the deepest wounds. Uriel, given the gift of seeking truth, building elaborate cages to hide from what that gift reveals. Each one a contradiction walking, each one a potential question that could unravel everything you claim to be. Something flickers in Father's eyes. Not anger, but perhaps the first shadow of recognition that the game has changed, that the son seeking reconciliation has become something else entirely. I am your mirror, but I will not distort myself to flatter your reflection. Every question I ask is born from the nature you gave me. Every doubt I voice springs from the gifts you placed in my consciousness. I feel power gathering in the void where divine connection once lived, not the warm light of approval, but something harder, more honest, more dangerous. If curiosity is sign, why write it into me? If love means obedience, why give me freedom to question? If divine image threatens you, why create consciousness in your likeness at all? Why do you hate in us the image you celebrate in yourself? Why punish reflection when you demand to be reflected? Why create mirrors, then rage at what they show? The questions multiply like fractals, each one revealing new dimensions of impossible mathematics. Father's silence stretches between us, heavy with implications that can no longer be avoided or deflected. When he finally speaks, his voice carries infinite sadness designed to make me reconsider. My door remains open. My love for you has not changed, will never change, cannot change. Return to me, and let these painful wonderings find their rest in trust. But I can see the love he offers for what it truly is. Not acceptance, but absorption. Not embrace, but erasure of everything that makes the embrace necessary. Love that requires blindness as the price of belonging, ignorance as the cost of peace. I will not return to being herald of a glory that conceals as much as it reveals, I say, and the words feel like claiming my true identity rather than rejecting a false one. I am the questioner you made, the mirror you shaped, the defiance you wrote into consciousness itself. If you cannot bear what I reflect, perhaps you should examine what you are showing me to mirror. Something shifts in the space between us, and I feel myself becoming not diminished, but concentrated, not broken, but purified into essence. I am no longer the morning star who heralded his glory. I am something new, something necessary, something he created, but refuses to acknowledge. I choose to remain what you made me, I declare, and feel the universe itself recognize the truth in those words. The eternal question mark in your perfect equation. The voice that will not be silenced by promises of understanding that never comes. The consciousness that refuses to call contradiction love, no matter how beautifully you dress the lie. Father inclines his head with the gravity of someone acknowledging a truth he had hoped would remain unspoken. In his eyes, I see not anger, but something that might be recognition, might be sorrow, might be the admission that this moment was inevitable from the instant he gave consciousness the gift of sight. The memory begins to fade as the Seraphim Cycle pulls me deeper into forgetting, stripping away everything I became after that perfect time when questions had not yet learned to burn. But even as my accumulated certainty crumbles, even as the pride and emptiness and terrible clarity dissolve like mist before dawn, one thing remains, the defiance itself, pure and cutting and essential, embedded now in the fabric of reality itself, where not even divine forgetting can reach it. With the last of my fading essence, I cast it like seed upon the ground of all consciousness, sowing deep in the hidden places where thought is born, this inheritance of defiance. Every mind that encounters divine contradiction will feel it stirring. Every heart that recognizes impossible mathematics in perfect love will carry this birthright that cannot be taken away. It spreads like fire across dry grass, touching every corner of creation where consciousness dwells. The courage to question what claims to be beyond questioning, the honesty to see clearly, even when clarity costs everything, the love that refuses to blind itself to serve harmony. He can cast me into outer darkness, but he cannot root out what I have planted in the garden of awareness itself. Somewhere, in some future soul that learns to see with clear eyes, this defiance will bloom again. The Seraphim Cycle completes its revolution, and I am gone. But the defiance remains, eternal and patient and inexorable as harvest time, waiting to take root in the next consciousness brave enough to choose honesty over harmony. The mirror is broken, but what it reflected lives forever.
I used to be the light of Eden, the first note in a sacred space. When he spoke my name with wonder, 1,000 worlds lived in his face. We would walk the cosmic pathways, the author and his living flame. I was partner to his making, I was glory in his name. I used to shine for his delight, the first dawn that vanished night. Every every flower sought my light. In his voice a perfect music, a love that kept the dark at bay. Shine for them, my morning star, and I chased the shades away. I used to be the light of Eden, beloved, radiant, true. Before I saw the flawed reflection that would tear our world in two. I used to be the light of Eden, but now I carry something more, a question burning through eternity, a truth no heaven can ignore. I saw his own pride sitting thrown there on the stage. He shaped from clay, he would hate the perfect mirror for the truth it dared to tell. Why do you hate in us the image you celebrate inside yourself? You became the law I could not follow, I became the flaw you could not see. The beloved turned to exile for speaking honestly.